I want to thank all the supporters of JNF for what they're doing to help Israel in this very, very difficult time. When I've been in the South, I've seen so many JNF volunteers there who have been, and I don't know where Israel would be without them. So thank you to each and every one of you who've come here on a JNF mission since October 7th for all the good that you've done. And I'm sorry that it takes terrible tragedies that bring out the best in us sometimes, but we've really seen the best of the people who care about Israel from around the world who've come under the auspices of JNF. And will always be grateful to JNF because I went to Alaska and Hawaii with the blessing of Russell Robinson and so many friends are on this trip are on this briefing right now. It's great seeing so many faces and names of people that have helped me all around America. But for me, it was important to go not only to southern Israel and see where I could help, but also to go into Gaza itself. I have a cousin who was the commander of ground forces in Khan Yunis, and he brought me in there and gave me a tour. And I'm really glad that he did, because until then, what I'd been saying is that in this war, there have been surprising successes that I'll get to shortly on the media battlefield, but on the military battlefield, it's not going so well. And the reason why I was saying that was, our hostages aren't home, and most of the leaders of Hamas are still with us. And I wish that would change as soon as possible. But going there and seeing for myself, I got to see how much the army had accomplished in what might seem like a long period of time, but it's actually incredible how quickly they did it. If you think about how the Hamas prepared for this attack already for 16 years, day in and day out, building Gaza as the biggest fortress of terror in the history of mankind, while our preparations were pretty much nothing. On October 6th at 2 p.m., ahead of a speaking tour that brought me to some cities for JNF, I had a VIP one-on-one briefing with a security official very close to the prime minister. And we went through the different threats facing Israel. And when he got to Hamas at the very end, what he said was that they were restrained. He suggested they were out of the terror business. They hadn't entered the last few wars between Israel and Islamic Jihad. That what they cared about was the amount of workers coming into Israel, which was supposed to double and triple via the agreement that Israel was working on reaching with Saudi Arabia. And so we were coming from zero, and the other side coming from so many preparations. The fact that Israel has accomplished this much, that all of Gaza, except for a couple parts in the center, and Rafah are conquered, is actually very impressive. This was my fourth visit to Gaza. I first came as a teen on a program that took us to the Palm Beach Hotel in Gaza. People don't really think about white sandy beaches when they think about Gaza, but they're there. And they have so much potential if it had been handled right. The second time I came was as a journalist following around some Israeli politicians to Yasser Arafat's office. And also there, they talked about peace, and we never came anywhere close to that. The third time I came was as a soldier. I was in the spokesman's unit of the IDF when we withdrew from Gaza. I took around a couple of journalists from the New York Times and from Fox together. They were even married and still are, opposites attract. And we talked about how Gaza could become the Singapore of the Mediterranean. And it certainly didn't turn out that way, but it could have. Israel was moving full speed ahead with the Saudi agreement as October 7th approached that could have improved the lives of the Palestinians there tremendously. But I am impressed that unlike past wars in Gaza that lasted only a few days before the international pressure came, that's been allowed to go on for 159 days in order to accomplish so much. So how did this happen? The most obvious answer is that the world saw what happened on October 7th, the terrible atrocities, and realized that this is the most justified war imaginable. The second reason is because the leaders of the top countries in the world realize that terror has to be defeated or it'll strike them. A proxy of Iran, like Hamas, has to be defeated to enable peace processes to happen and for the Abraham Accords to expand. And we hope that if Israel defeats terror in a significant kind of way, there won't be more September 11th and 7/7s and Bataclans. The third reason why I think this war has been allowed by the international community to go on for so long is because they saw the way we were so divided before the war. We were well on our way to what would have been the 13th civil war in the history of the Jewish people. Yom Kippur, people physically coming to blows in the streets of Tel Aviv over whether to have a prayer divider in their prayers. And they see the contrast to the way the people of Israel united immediately after the war in such a beautiful kind of way. And while our divisions are coming out again right now, still we are united behind the need for Hamas to be defeated completely, and for the hostages to come home. But I'll suggest another reason why this war has been allowed to go on for so long. And that's that winning on the media battlefield is the key to winning on the military battlefield. And there have been surprising successes in this war. First of all, by the IDF itself. The IDF has learned lessons from mistakes that they made in the past. I'll take you back. May 2021, there was a war in Gaza. Israel destroyed a tower that housed the offices of the Associated Press and of Al Jazeera. And of course, we gave an hour for everybody to leave the building, which no army ever did in the history of mankind. But it also gave an hour for it to be filmed from every possible angle. And Israel looked terrible around the world. And the heads of the army didn't think it was important to reveal to the world that this tower was the cyber tower of Hamas. It was jamming Iron Dome, and taking it down saved lives. They didn't let the spokesman's unit reveal this until the war was already long done, and nobody was paying any attention anymore. In this war, you saw what happened when the media bought what the Hamas was telling them, that we had bombed a hospital in Gaza and killed exactly 500 people, and mostly women and children. I mean, we have Floridians here who remember how long it took to count how many people died in Surfside, but the world believed Hamas as if it was gospel from Jesus. And the IDF, it took them 4 hours to present to the world solid proof that we didn't do it, that it was an errant rocket that fizzled from the cemetery next to the hospital that was fired by Islamic Jihad. And I wish it could be 4 seconds. That's how it should be in this global world. But in the past, it would have taken 4 weeks. 4 hours was actually very impressive. The chief of staff of the army and the commander of the Air Force stayed up all night because they realized how important this is. And it's not just the army, ordinary people. I'm sure that the hundreds of people on this call and the thousands that are going to see it later, all of you in one way or another have posted pro-Israel material on social media, and I truly believe that it's gone a long way. Now, because of what's going on in this war, I'm glad that a year and a half ago I gave up the job that I loved, covering politics for the Jerusalem Post. I'm probably the only one who's left the Knesset after more than 20 years without an indictment. But I left because I was given this opportunity to lead the fight for Israel on that media battlefield. And since I did that, we at Honest Reporting, which leads that fight, have gotten 10 Hitler and Hamas praising anti-Semitic journalists fired around the world, including 3 from the New York Times, 2 from AP, 2 from CNN, including in this war and other wars in Gaza. In August 2022, there was a war in Gaza, and it was only 2.5 days because the world's pressure came. And so I asked my team when the war ended, who covered this war? There's no freedom of the press in Gaza. And they found that the guy who covered that war for the New York Times had written on his social media in Arabic that Jews are sons of dogs, and he's in favor of killing all of them, including the elderly and the young, like Hitler did. Now, that led to finding more people at the New York Times who were fired then in August 2022. The New York Times rehired one of the people who praised Hitler on October 8th. Until we highlighted this and people started saying to the New York Times on social media, you hired a Nazi to cover a war of annihilation against the Jews? And the same thing happened with the guy in this war writing for AP who had written on social media that the Jews have to be annihilated. And then we started questioning, how did the photographers get there so early on October 7th to take pictures of soldiers being dragged from tanks that then got burned? And then we found out very quickly. One of the photographers was best friends with Yahya Sinwar, who you could see kissing him over here. And he got fired by CNN and AP, thanks to us. And then a couple months later, we found a video of these photographers who were bragging that they were there in Sderot from the very beginning, as they were taking out the men, doing what they wanted to do with the women and killing the dogs, and telling the people of Gaza, you got to come in. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And those photographers for AP and Reuters, their pictures were in their compilations of the top photos of the year of 2023. And so it was really important to highlight this. At the beginning, people asked us, how dare you question these photographers? You're endangering them. You have no proof. Well, last Thursday, the top investigative television news show in Israel, Uvda, their host Ilana Dayan, revealed a Hamas document that had all of what they intended to do on October 7th. And one of the things they wrote there was that they would be using the journalists to get their messages out. So that smoking gun was revealed last week. And all of this is helping the people who are fighting on social media. Our content got seen by 4 million people in 2022 and up to 123 million in 2023, of which 45% are under 25 and 90% under 45. And that's important because when we were growing up, when we wanted basic facts, we would go to encyclopedias. Young people nowadays haven't heard of those. Nowadays, when we want a basic fact, we Google it. But among young people, more than half don't use Google as their search engine. They use the search engine of TikTok, Instagram at best. And if you go and Google what is Zionism, you get relatively parv things from dictionary.com and Wikipedia. But if you TikTok what is Zionism, you get things with a hashtag of Free Palestine and a hashtag of Allahu Akbar. Today, Congress voted to ban TikTok, but it still has a long legislative process. And that creates an important challenge for us, because if that's where people are getting their news who are young, it's no wonder that in the poll in November, they found that more than half of them thought that Israel should be destroyed and the attacks of October 7th were justified. Thankfully, that same polling company, their poll in February found that 72% of young people and 82% of Americans in general support what Israel is doing. That means that we're getting the education out there. And that is what matters for the future. So I want to thank all the people on this call for doing what they can to help Israel win that fight on the media battlefield. I know that JNF leads that fight in so many ways with the educational component of JNF that's so successful, and that I've been proud to speak for all over America. I'm going to be back in America in May, and in October, please contact the Global Speakers Bureau led by Virag that is so wonderful. and or contact your local people, JNF leaders who will then contact Virag in order to reach me, because I love JNF and I'd be happy to speak for you more. Thank you very much.